All right, check 1, 2. That's probably it. And we're back. There we go. Sorry about that, guys. Listen, this is a new setup here in the tech studio. We got a big week ahead of you. Being the first stream, every once in a while, you need something.
Yeah,
to
and
kind of get it kicked
we're
off.
going to have little things like this that come out all week long. But we want to thank everybody for being here. Remember, subscribe, hit the bell. You'll get notified when we have streams. We're going to have multiple throughout the day, including a big contest with you tonight.
It's going to be a fun one tonight. I'll be playing golf against Chris Fauchal from Mizuno. Virtually 6 holes.
Yes, at Coeur d'Alene.
At Coeur d'Alene. I know a bunch of you voted against me. I don't accept that. I'm not okay with it. I'm going to prove you wrong, ideally. But now that we do have audio, there's a couple sponsors we want to shout out for the showcase week. First one is Bag Boy. They have a crazy cool cart bag right now that twists at the top.
It actually surprised us. We knew it was cool, but it actually surprised us. We all actually
really liked it's so smooth. It's like, you know, you see something like that, you think, man, we'll see how well it works. But I mean, that's perfect. And then the other one's Travis Matthew. You're rocking a really cool shirt. Pants, which you said today might be your new favorite pants.
They are probably my new favorite pants.
Okay. And some Quater shoes.
Yes.
I got the wild cards.
Money makers.
Money makers. Anyways, big shout out to them. I think.
Let me kind of explain today's first stream, because we got the contest coming later. But the first stream is going to be all about you guys and getting Mizuno information. You know, we've done a video where we tested everything out, kind of showed the data on the different irons. We have all the irons here from the JPX line. We have some MP line if people want comparisons, but not. This is really about the JPX focus. We also have the ES21 wedges. We're going to hit some balls. We're going to talk some tech. We're going to answer their questions. We're going to bring Chris in virtually to answer questions that they may have and kind of walk through what you're seeing on the screen.
Yeah. So maybe we'll kick this off with maybe a couple questions you guys might have about JPX 921 that you want to start the stream with, something we can answer for you, something that we can see if we can get Chris on the horn, maybe have him answer the questions for us. Josh, if I've still got you over there, wait a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Fauchal from Mizuno Golf. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, awesome.
The virtual hologram world is getting good now.
Yeah,
right?
Hold on. Perfect. Hey, so a little bit of a surprise for you guys. We wanted to kind of kick it up a notch. We wanted to have Chris, who's been a great friend of ours, to come and support us and give you guys the inside track on JPX and then the new wedge lineup. So,
I figured with the amount of trash talking that's been going on, with the anticipation behind this,
there's an awful lot of smiles since you got here. I don't know about that.
An opportunity to come to Nashville. I'm going to take you up on this. Now, I'm going to show up here. Got to see the tech studio. This place is awesome. If you haven't seen this, or I know we've seen a little bits and pieces of it, but getting to see it from actually here is pretty incredible. So I'm excited to kick this off and run you through some stuff.
Yeah. So I did ask the group out there if they had any questions about JPX. So we'll see if a couple questions come through. Okay. If not, do you want to give everyone a bit of a rundown on JPX 921? I'm sure everyone's seen it before, but they're also really familiar with 919. Can you clue them in on maybe the big changes that you saw?
Absolutely. So JPX line for Mizuno has actually been really popular for us. I mean, Mizuno has always been known as being that company for better players. People think of our blades, think of the 14s, 29s, 33s, all the old school stuff. But what amazes you is when you actually see some of the numbers, JPX is the majority of what we do. Hot metal, even that, like for 1 in every 20 sets of iron sold last year was a hot metal. And that's for the whole industry.
That's incredible.
So we're really excited about bringing out the 921 line and bringing a lot of new technologies. And what you've seen is an evolution of the JPX line, starting with the JPX, it started with the 800, 825, 850, 900, 919, 921. Each one is getting better and better and better. And with the 921, we brought some really cool new technologies. So in terms of the entire line, it features 4 models. There's the Tour, the Forge, the Hot Metal, and the Hot Metal Pro. And the big upgrade, the main one you'll see us talk the most about, is probably the Forge this year, because it brought in our chromoly material that we had on our Hot Metal and our Hot Metal Pro.
Yeah.
And that's something that's really going to take that Forge performance up a notch.
So the last time we got together and did video for THP, you and me directly, was my last trip out to your headquarters, your performance center, where you actually made a comment, and hopefully you don't get blasted for this. You said that if you guys really just had to pick one iron it was going to be the forged. Now that's a big statement, and you're making that statement about 919.
Yep.
Does that carry over into 921, and how significant are these changes?
Yeah.
To sort of validate that.
So I like to answer that question, the original one of like, if there was this weird government regulation where it's like, you get to pick one set of irons, that's all you can do. The Forge checks every box: feel, look, size, performance. And now we took the performance up a notch by bringing the chromoly to it. So one of the jumps of it is like, here, let me take a step back. I'll say it this way. Every year when you launch new irons, there's some small steps and there's some big leaps. The Tour is going to do what the Tour does. The 900 to the 919 to the 921, they're minor tweaks to get additional performance out of it. The Hot Metal and the Hot Metal Pro, there's good jumps in performance, but ultimately we work from the same set of tools in terms of materials and how we constructed it. The Forge was the one that took the biggest leap this year. So it still checks that box of having great feel, great looks, actually even got smaller than the previous version. But it took the biggest jump because we did a material change going from what was our 1025 boron to a chromoly material.
Okay. So we actually, I think, have a couple questions. James over here can feed it to us.
Why would a company use chromoly?
So the question is, why would a company use chromoly?
So what's really exciting about chromoly is Mizuno being such a custom company, we really like to make sure everything you can get the most performance out of it, but also have it very customizable. When you're making a golf club that's designed for distance, you want to go as thin as possible. To go super thin means you need to have strong material because it doesn't want to break. The benefit of chromoly is it's got added malleability, so you can actually do some more bending with it. So it gives you all the performance of the strongest materials out there, but it gives you the custom ability to make sure you can dial it in for yourself.
Great.
Building into that, what is, in your opinion, the best option for a mid-handicap around a 13 in the JPX?
That's a pretty loaded question just because it depends on what you're looking for. You know, if you're that mid-handicapper, we kind of have a couple of models between the Forge and the Hot Metal Pro there. The big difference I would point out between the two, if you're someone who values distance overall, the Hot Metal Pro is your answer, as opposed to if you're someone who wants a mix of distance with more workability, you like to be able to control your ball flight, be able to hit cuts, draws, stuff like that. The Forge is going to give you a lot more of that workability, a lot more, I guess, playability and maneuverability with it, and a little bit more feel as well.
We also have one pertaining to combo sets. Why would you or wouldn't you combo?
I think the great question is why wouldn't you is really my answer to that. I think you really should combo. The whole set of or whole series of JPX is designed to mix and match throughout. Obviously, it's going to take a little bit of knowledge and working with your fitter to make sure you're not getting loft gaps, because the lofts of the Hot Metal versus the Tour, there's some big jumps in there. So you got to make sure you're bridging the gaps correctly. But overall, they're a set of irons or a family of irons designed to be mixed and matched. So we've seen players go from all the way from Tour in the short irons to Hot Metal or Hot Metal Pro in the long irons. Or if you don't want to take it quite that far, we get a lot of people mixing the two Forge models. We do the Tour in the short and the Forge in the mid irons. It's all about where do you want to start bringing in added forgiveness, and you're allowed to kind of give up or sacrifice a little bit of workability. And that's where you'd make that next jump to the next model.
We also have a question about the differences between the Forged and the HMBs.
Yeah, the Forge and the HMB, those are two that definitely step on each other's toes because they're both chromoly. So the HMBs are designed, they're a hollow muscle back. So what it is, it's a chromoly face and neck with a welded back piece, where the Forge is a one-piece chromoly. So the big difference here is going to be the launch out of them. If you're someone who wants more launch, the HMB is actually going to give you a little bit more of that, where the Forge is designed for a little bit more distance. So it's all which one do you want to go for and which one do you value more than the other.
I'm sure everyone's dying to know out there, Chris, what you have in the bag.
My bag is interesting. It's sitting right over there, and I've got a mixed bag. So I've always been somebody who takes as small and player compact scoring irons as possible, and then I really want to bring in forgiveness when I get into the upper end. So right now I've got JPX 921 Tours in the 9 iron through the 5 iron, and then I jump to the HMB 4 iron and 3 iron again, because that's where I'm okay for it to not be as workable with the 4 iron. I just want a 4 iron to come in high and land steep. So that's where I brought those in just to get a little bit more launch out of them.
Any other questions coming in, James?
We do have a question about what would be the downside to a chromoly blade or the chromoly in a blade.
The downside to a chromoly is, let me think about that, because it's a weird one, because the downside is the upside. You know what I mean? Like, the downside is we're only going to use a chromoly when we're trying to do certain things with it. Like if we were to take a muscle back design, an MP20 design, and make it out of chromoly, you're not going to have much benefit to that material, because the face thickness is the face thickness. You're not going to get the COR just because of that material change. The only reason we're going to bring chromoly in is when we're wanting to thin out areas. So we're wanting to optimize a face or wanting to minimize the face thickness. So the downside would be that typically you're going to see chromoly in a club that is typically a little bit larger, just to give that face even more of a rebound area. But ultimately, because we use different types of chromoly, we use a 4140, 4135, 4130. We really choose the perfect chromoly for each execution. So if you're getting something that's forged, we're going to use a slightly softer chromoly. Again, it's not quite as soft as our 1025 material, so it may feel just a touch firmer, but overall, you're going to get benefits out of that.
Next, they would actually like to see you guys hit some golf balls.
Yeah, so
I like that.
I'm happy to hit, unless you
Please,
want to.
no, I want you to.
Okay, so why don't we just walk through the lineup? We've done this before.
Yep.
I'll have you stand over here,
Okay.
and then just make sure you're clear.
Okay.
I'll give you clearance, so I'm not, hitting at you, but this is a good spot if you want to get back in frame.
Mizuno, so let's slide back in
Yeah.
the stool.
So what do you think, Chris? Should we start with the Forge or straight in the Tours?
I'd start with the Tours,
Okay.
just because it's a good baseline. The Tour is going to give you a good idea of, really what Mizuno is most known for, is that super soft feel, the one-piece forging.
So before we get into anything else, we have 2 boxes of Mizuno
Yes.
balls here. We have RB Tour and RB Tour X. Before I pick the one I want to hit,
Okay.
why don't you give us a rundown a little bit on what the difference between the two is?
The big difference between the two is going to be the spin character of the two. The X is going to spin a little bit more. It'll be a little bit higher compression, it's a little bit firmer feel, but it's going to launch a bit higher and spin a bit more.
Okay.
The Tour is going to be the opposite of that, a little bit softer.
Sure.
So I don't know what you typically like.
Yeah, I'm a softer ball guy, so I'm going to go with the Tours.
Let's go for it. I'll open them up, but I'll feed you.
Perfect. Outstanding. So I have spent a little bit of time with the 921 Tours. This is a 7-iron.
Okay.
It has KBS Tour V in it, which I'm pretty familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm already stiff. So be gentle with me, Chris. So we'll see what we can do. Hit a few shots and then move into the next line. That's not half bad.
No, it's not bad.
So we have 7 irons here. When a golfer leans into Tours, and obviously you've done that,
Mm-hmm.
we're looking for maximum control, performance,
Correct.
characteristics of a guy who wants to work the ball a little bit, wants everything out of what he puts into it, right? Is that fair?
Yeah, I think the thing about Mizuno is we're really going to try to dial in every club for exactly what it's supposed to be. The Tour, there's literally no attempt to gain distance. That's not what this is about. So we use a softer material, the forge process, which is super soft, and we put everything designed for workability and nothing with distance.
Well, this is going well.
Go in.
Yeah, so numbers are pretty good. I would imagine this question is going to come up because I would assume a player who would traditionally play in one of your MP MBs would be looking at this as a very comparable head. What do you think is the biggest differentiator between your MP20 MB and an iron like the 921 Tour?
Yeah, so if you're comparing like the MP line to the JPX, what you're really going to see is the JPX is weighted a little bit more, I say aggressively, meaning there's more toe and heel weighting. It's designed to ultimately go straighter. And one thing to get a little nerdy and techie on it, an MP golf club typically has a shorter distance from the center of gravity to the shaft axis. That's going to give the player a little bit more of an ability to maneuver the ball.
Does anyone understand that?
Maybe. If not, you'll see it when you hit.
Sure, yeah.
So ultimately, a JPX is designed to fly a little bit straighter. So it's like, if you were to compare this, for example, to the MMC or some of the MP18 SC, which was our shallow cavity back in the day. This is designed to be a little bit more straight flying, and that is never leaving the flag. Ooh.
We have a couple of questions here. First off, they'd like to know what shafts are in these, Dan.
Oh, I actually happened to mention this is the KBS Tour V. Oh, I lost one there. Sorry.
It's all good.
KBS Tour V, it's a 110 stiff. It's something I've traditionally played. I prefer not to play X just from the feel standpoint, Chris.
And our stock shaft on that set is going to be a KBS money taper shaft.
Okay. So it's about 120 grams, so a little bit heavier.
Correct.
Performance are relatively close on their chart, which
the
is
Tour
cool.
V probably spins at a touch less.
I would say, yeah, fair. So let's hit one more with this and then move into Forge. What do you think? Try and cut this one in the hole.
These are designed for for precision, and these are
it's not bad.
Not leaving the target. I like that.
Okay.
We have two things though. First, we had a question about with the 7-iron spinning 7,000 RPM and rolling out 8 yards still. It's because the greens are currently set to firm on the simulator. The other one is for Vosh. What are your feelings about tonight after watching those swings?
Well,
that's
a good question.
You've been pretty confident on social media.
I'm still very confident. Let's not fool anybody right now. He hasn't holed one yet. Before these cameras were on, I was peppering that flag stick as well. So I understand that he's swinging good, which is why I wanted him to hit some, because I knew he needed a little bit more warm up.
Wow. Live. We are live. Cut commercial.
Building off that, they want to know what clubs you're going to use tonight, Dan.
Yeah, so I actually, the tours are obviously a good challenge, and I liked your comments earlier about why not blend. So we have the full set of tours built out with my Tour Vs. We also have the Forge, which we built out. Anyone who's been on THP and familiar with our events, we did an incredible one that had custom UST Mamiya recoil proto 95 in F4. So I put those in the Forge. I thought it'd be a lot of fun. So I think based on what we saw there and based on what we do see in this, it's probably going to be a pretty good determinant of what happens tonight. So we moved from JPX 921 Tour into their Forge. Once again, this is kind of like that all-encompassing one with all the new concepts built into it. When you talk to a player and suggest the differences between the two, can you run down the most likely change that they'd see, maybe a little bit more distance?
Yeah, so with the Forge, you're going to see a little bit more distance, particularly in the longer irons. They are a touch stronger lofted, but ultimately they are a stronger material as well with a thinned out face. So it's still Forge. You're still getting a lot of feel and a lot of feedback from it, but you should see a little bit more pop. And we can see this right off the bat. It's going to carry at or beyond the flag, where the others were landing just shy of it.
That might have had a bit more peak height to it as well.
And that's because it is a deeper center of gravity design. So even though it is stronger lofted, what we do with that golf club, it's a one-piece chromoly forging, but then we actually go in and we mill a pocket cavity actually from the sole side from there. So what that's going to do is that's going to allow us to pull the center of gravity back. So even though we're kind of countering that stronger loft by having it launch higher and peak out a little bit higher.
So we saw 44 yards of peak. Not super surprising for me with the difference in shafts specifically, but I would anticipate maybe like a couple yards higher with this profile.
For sure.
Yeah. So another one. Any other questions coming in, James?
Yeah, while you're hitting that one, we actually had a question about
heavy
order of forgiveness, JPX and NP, if you were to combine everything.
Putting them all in a mix.
The whole spectrum.
So if I was going to rank them all, so I'll start with most demanding and go all the way to most forgiving. So it'd be the MP20, the muscle back's going to be the most demanding. Next is actually going to be the JPX Tour. So it is a little bit lower MOI than even the MMC. So next step would be the the MP20 MMC. And then in terms of like MOI forgiveness, the Forged and the HMB sit very close to each other. So those are going to be right on top of each other. But like I said a little bit earlier, it's all about how much height you're looking to get. So the HMB is going to be more forgiving in the up-down direction, where the JPX Forge is going to be a little bit more forgiving in the toe-heel direction. Next from there would be the Hot Metal Pro, and then finally the Hot Metal.
Dan, they wanted to know if we could get a mic near the ball so they could hear what these sound like.
Yeah, I don't mind. So we're going to drop the mic down for forged here.
Still getting good spin rates out of this, which is one thing that you always struggle with when you get stronger lofted irons. We see a lot of manufacturers whose irons spin too low.
Yeah.
So I like it that that's a little bit, even though it's stronger, you're still getting close to 7,000 with that.
Okay, so that's a really good example. That was a bit thin compared to my last two. If you guys can still hear me, I'll pick that up. That was a little bit thin compared to my last two, but the sound actually continued. It was a nice continuation.
Yeah.
Depending on how high in the face you go. I think that's kind of an accomplishment, isn't it?
Absolutely. So we want to make sure that you understand where you mishit it and get a good amount of feedback. But at the same time, we don't want it to feel bad. Like the fact that you got a lot out of that and the feel was still there, yet you're able to recognize that was a little bit of a thin shot or a little bit hit different than your other one. That's one of our goals is we always want you to have a ton of feedback.
Let's give this one more hit and then move into HMP.
Yeah.
They also want to know why you're doing this. What golf ball are you using currently?
So we ran through that. Actually, Chris told us a little bit of a difference. We've got RB Tour and RB Tour X. I'm more of a less spin guy, so I went with RB Tour. But we do have both models of Mizuno here. Yeah, I was trying to turn that one over a little bit just to see.
So there is still some workability.
Yeah, starting point. Yeah, I wasn't really playing it to go out and come around. Kind of have to aim on the simulator a bit out to understand that a bit. But I did try and shut that face down. And you can see, based on my last two shots, there's definitely workability available in this head.
That's great.
Let's move into HMPs.
Yeah.
Good?
One of my favorite things, and if someone who's looking to study Mizuno a little bit and to understand what's going on each of our irons, if you look at our hosel on every one of our irons, I know a hosel is kind of a blank space, but if you look at it on ours, we tell our entire story on our hosel. So you'll see whether it's cast or forge is on the hosel, the material that we use, and it's going to give you a good idea of the playability. So if you look right now, that's Chromoly 4140M, right?
All right on that, right on the hosel here.
So that one's not a forged model. It doesn't say forged on there, but it tells you that material that's on there. The JPX Forge you were using just a minute ago, it's grain flow forge, and it's a chromoly as well. So you see that combination of the two. When you were hitting the Tour before, it's a grain flow forge HD with the 1025 Elite material. So it's great because even if you aren't in front of your computer, in front of your phone, if you're looking at the iron in the store, you can learn a lot about it just from studying the hosel.
Okay. So this is Hot Metal Pro.
Yep.
Close to the same shaft. This is Recall. Well, it actually is the same shaft. Prototype 95 F4. And while I'm doing this, if someone in the back can hunt down their Hot Metal, because we'll have to hit that last just to make a comparison. So now we've gone from forged to Hot Metal Pro.
Yep.
My assumption here, and this is based on my experience during our last video we did together where I kind of fell in love with chromoly, there's a lot of distance and power built into these irons.
Totally. These are the hot metals are truly our distance clubs. So they are stronger lofted. They are thinner faced. It is, instead of just a little bit of a slot that was milled from the sole side, this basically has 360 degrees of channel around where you're getting more feedback, more power from the face, more rebound area. So you're going to see this carry significantly farther.
Vosh, what golf ball are you currently playing?
So I switched back between the RB Tour X, and actually we're working on some prototype ones. I've played that a decent amount as well. So always hunting, which is a good thing. So I'm someone who likes a little bit more spin. So where Dan's got the less spinning RB Tour, I'm more the X player. See, spin came down just a touch on that one, which I would expect from the stronger loft, but it's still not too low.
What are Mizuno's thoughts on data tracking like ShotScope or Arcos?
I am a data guy, so the more data you can get, the better. All that's going to do is help you. It's amazing how much you can learn about your own game if you just study stuff like that. Get the tendencies of your misses, short, long, left, right. It can pinpoint flaws in your set makeup. It can pinpoint flaws in even your alignment, stuff like that. So I'm all about that.
That's a pretty well struck shot right there, Wash. Left the face a tiny bit open. But that, I mean, yeah, these are the numbers I'm looking for, especially the flight and spin.
Yep.
If I want to have an iron of this nature to be able to control it on my greens.
So
things like that.
Talk to me about going from you've hit a grain flow forge 1025 to now what is essentially a cast chromoly. Talk to me about the feel difference you're feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're pretty close. Obviously, there has to be an expectation when you transition from a player profile into something with more forgiveness and more tech packed into it. In this case, the thing that I always really liked, and it includes 919, is there's that full profile you don't lose out on. I don't feel like any iron in this lineup, you're giving up a sound quality that you would get. Maybe not as dense.
Right.
But I mean, that's realistic.
Yeah.
You can't expect with all that material to disappear from behind the head that you get the same thing. I think, and back to the blended conversation, I don't think there's enough of a difference between the four heads from a sound perspective to stop someone from doing it.
Well, and I think that's a really great point. And one of the things that we always try to do is engineer the acoustics into the head where the sound tells you what we're trying to do. So if you're talking something like a JPX Tour, where it is a one-piece grain flow forge, small players-oriented club, we want it to sound a little thicker. We want it to sound more solid. On a Hot Metal Pro like that, I mean, you could tell just from the sound of that. I could have not seen any of this. You could tell that's going farther. And a lot of that is engineered sound as well.
Okay.
So that's going to be the frequencies we want it to vibrate at and how we thin out areas and how we reinforce certain areas to make sure that it's going to sound like that. So if you look, you actually can see some sound ribs all throughout that club.
We talked about that last time. You can't see it looking at it like this. You can see the way I'm looking at this. But as soon as you turn it, you see these this big channel with these, what I'm assuming is solid stabilizers to promote sound quality.
So, and that's where, when you get some golf clubs that are really distance oriented, some of them, if they're not reinforced properly, can have more of a crack to them and almost sound, you don't want to say broken, but have like a non-pleasant sound to them. With Mizuno, we want to appeal to the visual, the audio, everything. So we want to dial in a good sound, and those sound ribs help us do that. But at the same time, we want to make sure that it still feels like it's going a long way, because ultimately that's how you're going to get all that feedback, is through all your senses.
One of the things, I know I've been playing a little bit of a cut. I think that might be more of a recoil thing. A little bit light to what I'm used to, probably a little bit soft to flex to what I'm used to, which is, I'm assuming, why I was a bit shredded with the Tour Vs overall. That's not really what I want to focus on there. What I really liked about that is, while I did leave a couple out to the right, my performance when I hit it well, you could see I was kind of peppering the flag a lot. And that's something I think people need to realize. As you progress away from that player profile, you still have the ability to acquire a product that can laser into where you want to go to, as long as you put a good swing on it.
It's not distance giving up everything else. It's not distance by sacrificing accuracy. There's a lot in here that's, again, we're Mizuno. Like, our heads, even our most forgiving golf clubs, they aren't huge from heel to toe. They aren't super offset. They're not super thick top line. They're all those things that still can appeal to a better player. So the Hot Metal Pro, for example, we have multiples of those in play on the PGA Tour, which I think a lot of our competitors can't say that about some of their most forgiving golf clubs.
So I switched to Hot Metal.
Okay.
There are subtle changes at the top line when you look at it address. Maybe a bit more offset, maybe a little bit thicker on the top side. But then when you turn it over and look at it, you have to work a little bit harder to see that difference between Hot Metal Pro. How important is that for you guys?
It's very important. I mean, ultimately, between the Hot Metal and the Hot Metal Pro, I'd call it the package of technologies that we're working from, they're the exact same golf club. It's a cosmetic and visual difference is the only difference between these two. So from behind, the difference you'll notice just right off the bat in terms of like color, the Hot Metal Pro has a little bit of a black in it, where this is more of a chromed out. But really, everything is the same. The 360-degree undercut, the loft, everything. It's strictly a Hot Metal is going to be a little bit wider sole, more offset, thicker top line, and a little bit longer from heel to toe. So again, we want to make sure that even if someone wants to blend a hot metal and hot metal pro, it's easy to do.
Yeah.
Or if someone really just wants a ton of forgiveness on the top of their set, they could put a hot metal with some tours.
Yeah. So Chris, this one has just a standard recoil 95 f4.
Okay.
So it's not probably going to launch as low as the other ones,
Right.
By comparison. But I would assume in a product like this, there's going to be a little bit more to support that launch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
it's designed to launch.
Yeah.
So the stock shaft we're going to put in that is we have a recoil as a stock offering. It comes in a combo set. And we also have a Nippon, the new Neo is stock in that in steel. But ultimately, those are two shafts that are going to kick the ball up in the air. And on top of that, the head design itself, because it is that wider sole, it does allow us to pull more mass back. So it's got a deep center of gravity and a very low center of gravity as well. So it's going to launch it very high.
Yeah. I feel like, so what I was doing there, I was trying to start it to the right and kind of bring it back over. I was pretty impressed with how straight it ended up being.
Right.
Because I didn't actually shut the face down very well. So where I was trying to hit that draw in like a traditional player iron, I would imagine it's going to go quite a bit more out to the right. I want to hit a couple more to try and turn it over.
Yeah.
And see how much workability we can do.
Cool.
I'm not a big draw guy. If I am, I'm kind of playing that pull draw.
Yep.
Which, no one plays. So.
Dan, while you're doing that,
Sure.
They want to know what your thought on feel is for each of these irons.
Yeah. So let me hit this. All right, that should
was
get
solid.
it. Yeah. So here's the draw. And this is what I really want to promote for you guys. And not just this type of product is more important to me. There's workability in everything. And I think a lot of people fear the idea that, well, I'm giving up everything to go to forgiveness. I'm giving up everything to go for launch. I just hit a fade and a draw kind of on command, one bad swing of the bunch, which didn't end up being that bad. I think as we progress, and not just your company, but many companies, we're finding that there's not really any big concessions.
Right.
And that's something I really want to tell a story of and why we did the video on the JPX lineup late last year, which is on YouTube if you guys want to check it out. There's the idea, that difference, and I hate it. And this proves that no matter what kind of player you are, if you want to work the ball, maybe it's not the hot metal, maybe it's the hot metal pro, maybe it's forged, it's still very much there.
Well, and one thing I want to point out that you see in a lot of game improvement irons is you see a lot of very forgiving irons and a lot of distance generating irons being very, very low spin. And with low spin comes lack of workability. So one of the things we tried to do in the hot metal and the hot metal pro range is make sure there's still spin there. Because without that spin, the ability to hit that little cut's not there, or the ability to turn it over is not there. So because, I mean, yours only dropped maybe a couple hundred RPM from the most forgiving to the least forgiving. So you're able to get a similar level of workability between them.
So you had a question about the feel performance.
Your thoughts on feel through them.
So I think not surprisingly, and if we want to talk full lineup, we can.
Yeah.
MP20 MBs are Mizuno perfection.
Right.
I'm not going to compare it to others because I hate doing that. From my perception, is Mizuno perfection. That's you guys showcasing the great technology you use to forge your products. Still grain flow.
Still grain flow.
Still very big on that. So for me, that's that. When you move into tours, you don't quite get there, but you still get a really dense experience. And that's definitely from a player perspective. If that didn't have that, I wouldn't do it.
Right.
And as much as I don't want to knock the company, you guys did an incredible job transitioning from 919 because I personally wasn't a big fan. And it's not a bad thing. Sound is personal.
Yep.
Totally different with 921. Moving into forged, I think it's that great blend.
Yeah.
I think there's not a big margin of difference between forged and, the tours into the hot metal pros. And I think the only difference is that there's a forge in between. And that kind of comes back to that blending the set thing. I don't see any conditional changes between the four.
Right.
Now, maybe going from your MP lineup would be a little bit different, but JPX to JPX, I loved it.
That's great. One thing that was interesting, if you looked at how we launched the 919 line, we launched the Tour, the Forge, and the Hot Metal. And then actually the Hot Metal Pro came after. If you remember, that came as a PGA show launch when everything else was before that. And if you look to how we designed them, we actually originally designed just the 3. And then it was like, oh, where can we shove this one in?
Okay.
So it's like the Hot Metal Pro and the Hot Metal really sat on top of themselves. The Hot Metal Pro and the Forge really sat on top of themselves with the 919 line. With 921, we brought them all out at once, and we used that as an opportunity to really separate the whole line. So we pushed the Forge even a little bit more players. We pushed the Hot Metal even a little bit more game improvement in terms of head size and how strong we went on the loft. But that gave these other 2 a lot more room to breathe. And it also allowed us to make nice steps in terms of feel and performance from the Tour to the Forge to the Hot Metal Pro to the Hot Metal, a really nice blend between all of them so that you could do those combo sets.
So I think James got another question. I'm going to take a drink while he asks that.
We did have a golf ball question.
Shoot.
So, as pertains to the 2 golf balls on a 7-iron, what's the spin difference you could expect? Because you mentioned one who prefers a higher spinning golf ball.
So it all depends on the player in terms of angle of attack, like what percentage difference you'd get. Typically, I've seen between our between our RB Tour and our RB Tour X, I've seen about 500 RPM difference. So a little bit more spin out of the X, a little bit less out of the standard.
The other question is, are you intentionally letting Dan take a ton of swings so he wears himself out for tonight?
Wears himself out, yes, a little bit. He looks a little fresh right now, but at the same time, I saw some rusty swings earlier, so I'm letting him knock a little bit of that rust off.
Wow. I'll tell you, I played around against James last night.
How'd that go?
It went pretty well.
For James or for you?
Not for me. No.
Not for you.
So I know we talked irons.
Yep.
I really want to talk ES21 a little bit with you.
Yeah.
Because this is such a cool product. When I saw it, I was like, what in the world are they doing?
Right.
Because it's not, in my perspective, when I think about a Mizuno wedge, the last thing I'm thinking about is something like this.
Yeah.
And I think it's exciting. There's a lot going on, and I don't want to steal it from you, but I do want to say the pure design standpoint of the ES21, the way you guys curve the back is so great because when I put this down at a dress, it changed my whole perspective on it.
Totally.
So do you want to lay it out for everyone?
Sure.
And here, you can have 1 or 2.
I'll take both of them. So it's so funny the feeling you'll get about the ES21 depending on where you see it first. If you see it from behind first or if you see it at a dress first, it's a totally different impression. So I'll start by telling the whole design theory and the concept behind it. When we designed the ES21, our goal was we wanted to put the center of gravity exactly center of the wedge. And that sounds like something that's super basic. That sounds like, oh, well, everybody wants that. But if you look at the traditional wedge design, it very much lends to a golf club that has a center of gravity towards the heel. So the very traditional, the blade-like wedge, all of them, almost all of them on the market, the center of gravity lives a good ways, as much as 7 to 10 millimeters towards the heel side of center. What we did is we actually did a 2-piece construction. It's actually very similar to our HMB, where we have a forged face and neck and then a welded back piece, which gave us opportunity or access to the inside of the club to move a lot of mass towards the toe and high to really bring that sweet spot exactly center. So now by having the sweet spot in the middle, you're going to get much more consistent spin rates. ES stands for extra spin, but really, or enhanced spin, but ultimately it's just giving more consistent spin, because if you open it up and hit it towards the toe, you're still closer to the sweet spot than if that center of gravity lived towards the heel. And it comes in 2 different versions. There's a wide soled and a traditional soled. The traditional sole is actually the same sole width as our T20. The wide sole is a lot wider, so you're going to get a lot more out of that. But we've got tons of different loft and bounce options, so you can mix and match them. When you look at it at dress, it's still very player shape.
It's so tight.
And even though there's so much mass up here, there's a massive bevel that goes there to really make it look like it actually measures, like the silhouette of it measures thinner than our T20. So it looks totally different at a dress than it does from behind.
And an unbelievable finish on it as well, which is a nice little differentiator on top of what it already presents.
It's our black ion finish. That's just a really sleek look. Again, black's a little slimming because it does a big looking wedge. So a big looking wedge from this view. So that's one of the other things that you try to do to make it, bring that back a little bit.
Okay. So I would imagine people are going to want to see the kind of numbers we can get.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll give this one
Please do. I handed you the traditional sole. I assume that's the one you wanted.
Yeah, I mean, this will be fine. Do you want to predict? the kind of spin I can put on this?
So so how far do you hit your, what is that, a 56 degree?
This is a 56.
Okay. And how far do you hit your 56?
I don't, because I play 54, but
Okay,
I'm
how
going
far
to
do you-
guess,
let's
I'm
see,
gonna
how
guess
far do you-
somewhere around 105, 108.
Okay. And I bet you, because you just looking at your swing, you're a pretty high spin player, I would imagine.
Yeah, I don't hide spin.
So I would guess that you're going to spin this around 11,000 to 12,000 would be my guess on this one.
Okay, you want to see?
Let's see.
You guys want to see?
Right down the pipe. Yeah. 105, exactly what you
We found
said.
the
I
number.
like that.
All right, now it's all about spin. So these, everyone waits with awe and
I know, right?
concern.
Come on.
Let's see the number. There it is.
11.8. There you
11.8. That's
Nailed it.
That's big spin.
That's big time spin.
And from a perspective that there is a lot of performance built into this, I think a lot of people end up fearing, like you mentioned previously, more tech you put into it, likelihood of less spin
Right.
is a reality. And in this case, I'm
It's not
not
the
chasing
case.
much. Yeah. So
Well,
let's hit one more.
Here's one funky thing about wedge design as well is the traditional wedge design, because there's not much depth to them, meaning like from face to back, a wedge is typically like a blade-like design. The hossel's so long and there's so much loft, the center of gravity actually usually lives outside of the wedge. When the center of gravity is outside the wedge, that actually projects the sweet spot down and actually hurts you in terms of spin. By having a hollow construction here, we brought the center of gravity even deeper, which projects the center of gravity up, which puts more spin on the ball. So again, a very neutral very neutral sweet spot with a deep center of gravity is going to give you just a ton of spin regardless of impact location.
I shut the head down a little bit on that one to see if we could get some more out of it.
Yep.
It ended up being, I think, like 110.
Yeah.
So I got a little bit more than my expected number.
Mm-hmm.
Also dropped the spin a little bit, which is pretty cool. And that's another one of those. I'm not a big guy on just pure wedge workability.
Right.
Not outside of my highest lofted wedge, so it would be my 58.
Yep.
But I know a lot of people out there love to do whatever they can with their wedge. I don't understand it, but people love to do it. This kind of proves that you can alter distance, spin, even in a package like this, which is going to do more than just your traditional bladed wedge.
Can the ES21 be bent?
It can. So it can be bent plus or minus 2 degrees. It can be bent plus or minus 2 degrees, upright, flat, strong, loft. It can absolutely be bent. However, we do recommend that you order it from us bent because it is a black ion finish on top of a satin chrome. So if you don't know what you're doing, if you're not a skilled bender, you could easily, remove some of that black. Yep.
The other question is, how does the ES21 feel versus other Mizuno wedges, Dan?
Yeah, I don't have one directly here to compare it to, but from a wedge to wedge standpoint, and we are inside, so generously speaking, it's hard to do full comparisons. It just sounds like a complete full wedge. I don't sense hollow. I don't sense an obscene amount of material behind the ball. It's just, to me, like any other wedge.
Well, and one of the things I'll point out is even though it's hollow in a lot of golf clubs, like hollow in irons right now, the point of hollow is to increase COR. So a lot of the hollow irons now are thin-faced irons. This is a hollow wedge, not to make it hotter, but to give us more free weight to move the mass around on the back. So it actually is a very thick-faced hollow wedge.
Okay.
So even though it is hollow, it's not going to feel thin because we left a lot of mass there. It's just a thick hollow wedge.
Other question is on the micro grooves and how they work, say, on a dewy morning.
That's one of the big things. And ultimately, wedge game is about consistency. You want it to go the same distance every time, regardless of conditions, regardless of impact location. So we did a couple of things. First, neutral sweet spot. Next, our quad cut grooves. Finally, our hydroflow micro grooves, which actually, if you look very closely, it's tough to see it unless you're really like diving in. There's actually laser etching in the vertical direction. And what that allows us to do is actually help channel moisture away from the grooves. So again, it works like the tread of a tire, making sure that you're getting all the mass or all the water away. So you're going to get more consistency and more likelihood of that groove grabbing.
That's pretty great. I think we're getting close to wrapping it up. We've run through the JPX lineup. We've run through the wedges. I'd love to get some more questions for you guys out there now that we have Chris here available to answer your questions.
They also want to watch you hit a golf ball. So
there we go. That's great. My goal here was to stop hitting.
Okay, I like this.
I think I've maxed out.
Here's what
abilities.
I'll say is at least Dan's been warming up, so this is going to be a fresh swing for mine.
And make sure you tell them about the club.
I did bring a kind of a special, unique club. This is an MP20. This is the copper set. So I've got a set of these. I've got some JPX Tours. I've got a mixed bag. But I want to give those who are actually supporting me and getting some votes in to go along with my trash talking, which Dan's too nice. It's the Canadian in him. He's so nice that he won't play in as nearly as much as I'm doing.
You think that until you go to swing and
right.
But
I'm excited for tonight. So I'll take a couple of swings. Not bad for the first one of the day.
That's for the record, everyone. That's not his first of the day. It's his first one of the hour.
First one of the hour.
Okay.
You're right about that.
Let's also make it clear. If this doesn't showcase you guys why it's basically 50-50 or was 50-50, I don't know what would. And this guy's a stick. We all know that.
Well, and I love it that there's the auto putt, so I don't have to worry about that part of it. That's going to help.
I'll tell you, you'll love it until you're 20 feet away and it says 2.00.
Yeah, that's true.
It hurts the heart a little bit. Now, that's a great shot.
Right down the line. I'm hitting a 7-iron. It's not a hot 7-iron. It's just a muscle back, but.
Hey, Dan, are you guys playing for that set of clubs he has in his hand?
I mean, I was wondering why my set that was supposed to come from them didn't end up falling off the truck. So, I mean,
there's a chance. We can work something out.
So while we have Chris hitting a couple more for us, is there any iron specifically? We're not going to make him go through all four. Is there any iron in the JPX lineup that you guys want to see Mr. Beauchal hit for you without any ability to edit film?
I like it.
So we'll wait for that question to come in. We'll let him hit one more, and you're welcome to run through any of the sets if you want to.
I mean, I always like to. I got to see you hit some hot metals, which that helps because I can at least get some lighter weight and some distance out of it. So I've got a hot metal here.
There we go. Do you want to switch to your ball? Are you okay?
I'm okay.
Okay.
Got a little tuggy on them.
Well, I hear that you guys are saying all of them. I strongly recommend you start picking one of the four. Otherwise, we're going to have to go offline.
The first one was the Forge. Yeah, the Forge seems to be the most wanted.
Forged?
That's a great
Let's
one,
go to
yeah.
Forged. All right.
Hey, James, tell Dan to tell him we have a video coming up on Fly.
Well, we have a video coming up on Fly High.
So, wanted you guys to get a chance to hear that hit. Well struck.
Thank you.
Beautiful. We will have a lot of content coming from Mizuno, including one on High Fly, which will be a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
We're also going to do some stuff on your new putter products, which look great. You're up to, I believe, 6 models.
It is 6 models in the M-Craft line now. Yep.
And then maybe a couple hidden surprises. You never know.
Definitely.
As we continue to chip away at Chris telling us what new product none of us can see. So far, not very, very successful on my end.
You're getting there, though.
I'm trying.
You've asked the right questions to kind of roundabout get some info.
Yeah, we'll see if any of my assets can support that. So why don't you hit a couple more?
Yep.
And then if there are any other questions for Chris while he does that, please do ask them.
And anything about Mizuno, those of you who know me or know of me, I'm kind of an open book. So
some questions about, did you by chance see the video on social with new drivers?
the one that came this morning?
The one that came this morning.
I did see that one this morning.
And there's been some questions on that.
Okay, so today we started leaking some information on some new drivers. You're going to learn a lot more information about a week from now. We're very excited about, I know the new one showed off a couple of new products. They showed up on the USGA and RNA list a couple weeks ago. Actually, Keith Mitchell was playing one of the new drivers this week at Sony. He was, I believe he got tied for the lead on Sunday, or maybe on Saturday he was tied for the lead, but he's absolutely bombing it. But we are stoked about some new drivers. And I know there's a lot of new product in the market right now. The new Mizuno one is really good. And I get it. I'm quite biased. But at the same time, It's really good. We've measured all the new stuff and we're very excited to tell you more. But I know we are actually going to record some of that stuff a little bit later on, not live, and let you see it in a little bit. So,
I mean, you could show them the new driver. It's right there under your head cover.
it is. Oh, yeah. Maybe we'll hold off on that. For just
show them the
few.
head cover. That'll really upset.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep it on there.
Yeah, here we go.
First look, brand new Mizuno driver. There you are, folks. You saw it here first. PHP Live.
With
covers could not be more hipster.
with my beater head cover. That's all ripped up.
And this is what I do for you guys. I bring brand new content every time. So, Chris, why don't you hit 2 more, and we'll see if any other questions come in.
Absolutely.
That's just pure power. That's all that is.
That is not leaving the line.
Oh, touch it.
Oh,
That's kind of disappointing because I know that's going to cost me a couple points in our challenge.
I hope so.
Really regretful that I had you hit 2 more, but you know, I'm a man of the people.
I'm telling
you.
Have faith. I know I'm a little guy, and I know his handicap's lower than me, and he's
It's
a
only-
better player than me.
It's only lower when I can play golf.
That's true.
So-
I got that going. We didn't schedule this for July.
It's probably intentional, wasn't it?
Yes. A little tuggy.
Well, that's really disheartening that we have to end on what looks like a missed green. I want you to keep that in mind. Again, it's still, you still have, do we still have time, Josh, to put our votes in?
I just got a question for Bosch, though, and I don't know what it means, so I'm going to ask it.
Okay.
Somebody from Minnesota asked, "What is your prediction for the Twins coming this year?" I'm assuming it means the baseball team, but
That sounds like information that I don't even know about. If somebody knows something that I don't, then we'll go from there.
At Bosch68 on Twitter.
Yeah. Yes.
You went to Vanderbilt. Why do you root for the Alabama? It's
Uh,
like a conflict of interest.
Well, my wife went to Alabama, and I don't know if you paid attention to the SEC this year. Between the two teams, they went 500. But the majority of those wins, meaning every one of them, came from the Alabama side. So it's been actually fun to root for that team. So I am an Alabama fan, but at the same time, when Alabama's playing Vandy, it's kind of like my tweets at you. I want Vandy to win by 1 million.
So I didn't know Vandy's record until you made me look it up. Just so
I
we're
didn't
clear.
make you.
So that's your fault.
That is my fault. We got a
Um,
whole new staff coming in. We're going to
yeah.
be really good. I actually stopped at the Vanderbilt bookstore on the way in, bought a
Yeah.
nice new Vandy Gator on the way in.
Big changes coming at Vandy, somewhere between the next 1 and 100 years. It's perfect.
Absolutely. About 100 years ago, we were awesome at football. If you look those up too.
So I think we can wrap it up for the day, or I guess for the afternoon, because we do have now
We
that
do.
everyone knows, head-to-head live in the THP Tech studio.
Yes.
It's going to be intense, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard. There might be heckling. There might be, probably not aggression. I would
No.
hate to do that to you.
Drink or two.
There'll be a drink or two.
Commentary.
There will definitely be commentary. I hope you guys have a chance to join us. Once again, I want to thank you, Chris, for taking the time to come and do this. This has been a lot of fun already.
Absolutely.
I know we have a lot of products we're going to look at this afternoon, building up to our evening event. Again, for everyone out there, make sure you do check THP socials, get on the forum. We will have a lot of content this week that we will be bringing directly to you guys to support your pursuit of the best equipment for your game. So again, thanks, man. And look forward to seeing you guys later on tonight.
And I appreciate y'all letting Mizuno kick off what's going to be a very, very fun week at THP. So thank you guys all. And thanks, Dan. Thanks, Josh. Thanks, everybody. So this will be awesome.